figured out. Churches are hospitals for hurting people. They're places where you go when you have a need and when you need somebody that cares about you. It's what churches are supposed to be. Now I realize that there's some churches out there that treat Christianity as if it was some kind of a popularity contest. But it's not. It's not a matter of I'm better than you. All it means is that I found hope. I found a place that loves me. And I can be part of that group. And I'm never going to find a church that's completely perfect. I'd be suspicious of any church that would accept me of being completely perfect, because I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I fall on my face all the time. What churches are supposed to be is a body. Grace Baptist Church is not the traditional church per se. There's not brick and mortar. We don't have blocks. We don't own real property. It's all virtual. So if it's all virtual, how can this be a church? Well, the church isn't this building. It's never been this building. Even if we were in, the building is not the church. The chairs I sit in is not the church. The pastor getting up in the pulpit is not the church. You know what the church is? The church is the believers who attend there. That's what the church is. The church at Second Life are the members who believe in Jesus Christ and are united in fellowship together. Churches are not perfect because we're not perfect people. They're supposed to be a place to edify and to build. They're supposed to be home. So if you're struggling with whether you belong here or not, you need to decide if this is the world that's going to do that. There's no church that's going to be the ideal church. And this guy has got this thing called Uncomfortable. It's a new book out there. I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about doing the Bible study. And one of the parts of it is he talks about what's your dream church. Lazy Boy recliners in the auditorium, and they've all got cup holders and hot and running coffee, and they give out Krispy Kreme donuts when you show up to make it church. Because the church has never been about the property. And so tonight we're going to look at the book of James. And it's important. Okay, now Jesus was the Son of God and the Son of Mary, right? All right. So he was fully God, fully man. But Joseph. So they wouldn't have been full brothers and sisters because their fathers weren't God. Okay? And I know that sounds a little odd to say it that way, but understand that James basically was Jesus' half-brother. And because of that, for that very reason, he grew up in that household where Jesus was. Now, I don't know about you, but that would have been kind of weird. Okay, because Jesus is sinless, right? He's perfect. He never did anything wrong. He literally was perfect. He never violated the law. He never sinned. Which means he never lied. He never cheated. He never stole. He never used the Lord's name in vain. He never disrespected his mother and father. He obeyed all 10 commandments all the time. 24/7. Now, how about you? But if that was my older brother or sister, that would be annoying. I mean, what do? You go to school. You can't blame Jesus. James couldn't go to school and say, hey, look, Jesus over there, he stole my lunch money. No, he didn't. Now, he might have accused him, but Jesus was such that when his mother said things like, well, James, I wish you were more like your brother Jesus, then she could really mean it. And so what I want you to know is that James grew up, and when he did, he became the pastor of a church in pastor of the church in Jerusalem. It's one of the pastors. And he believed that Jesus was the Son of God. And he believed that Jesus died for his sins. And he believed that Jesus rose from the grave. That's his half-brother. That's the guy who was raised with him. And believe me, folks, if Jesus had been a phony, who knows you're a phony? You're usually your family. Okay? And so we're looking at the book of James because the guy who wrote it had a very interesting perspective. So being the brother of Jesus would have been very, very interesting. And so no matter what James did, he would have come home and been like, oh, I had a good day, Mom. I got B's, whatever. And it would have never been able to compare.
And he writes a letter to a bunch of people who are really going through hardships. Okay? These are people who were being chased out of their homes. If you got saved in the early church, in the first century, if you became a follower of the way, because they didn't call us Christians then, because they didn't start calling us Christians, it was a derogatory term. It meant imitators of Christ. We were little Christ. Okay? It was meant as a put down. Well, you're just a Christian. You're a little Christ. Okay? The early church called itself the followers of the way. And they were followers of the way. And if you were caught converting to Christianity, you might be stoned to death. The Roman soldiers might round you up and execute you. You might lose your job. You might lose your house. You might lose your family. These were people who were being persecuted because they were believers. You know, they were being burned alive, and they were being thrown in the lion's den, and they were being crucified, and they were going through it, and James wrote them this letter. James wrote them and be honest with you, Mastiff, I don't mind that. I mean, being a Christian, I don't mind saying that I'm like Christ, okay? I want to be an imitator of Christ. It's what the Bible teaches, that we are to imitate him. So I don't have a problem with that. But in the early days, when they said the word Christian, it was not meant as a compliment. It was meant as a derogatory remark. It was saying, well, you're just a little Christ. Hey, I'm thinking about it. Christ is this, and Christ, and that's not a bad thing. Okay? So, but here we've got this letter, and I want you to listen to this, because I want you to remember what's going on, that they're being round. Okay? So that's the environment that James writes this letter in. And it just blows my mind, because he starts it this way. Chapter 1, verse 2 of James. Consider it sheer joy, my friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. Have you ever had a season of life like that? Where it's not just raining down, but you're getting hit from every angle, and it just seems like nothing lets up. And you just don't know where to turn. And you know, it's like when you're in a rainstorm and the wind is blowing and the umbrella is worthless. I've been there before. Okay, you know, you guys have all been down that road where you're in a storm and the wind is just blowing in all directions, and so the rain, you might as well throw the umbrella away. You're going to get drenched. And sometimes our lives feel that way, where every problem you can imagine comes at us. And we just don't know where to turn, and we just want to quit. We just want to curl up in a little ball and cry. I mean, who loves those kind of seasons? But off the bat, James says to consider those seasons joy. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open, and it shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work in you, so you become mature and well-developed and not difficult in any way. If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father, and he loves to help you, and you're going to get his help when you ask for it. And in verse 12, it says, anybody who meets a testing challenge head-on and manages to stick it out is a mighty fortunate. For such people loyally in love with God, the reward is life and more life. Now, I want to pause and stop right there and talk about this a second, okay? It's an amazing thought. You don't know what you're doing? Stop and ask the Father, because the whole point of the trials and the tribulations and the struggles is to become you mature and well-developed. Not deficient in any way. Let it do its work. Let the trial, let the struggle change you. Now, guys, I know. Let the struggle change you. Now, guys, I know that modern Western Christianity doesn't like this, because we want to get saved and have all of our problems taken care of. Oh, yes, I'm a believer now, and so nothing bad is ever going to happen to me again. That's hogwash. Yes, I said it, the word hogwash. Okay, if you guys don't know what a hogwash is, I don't. You'll just have to look it up. I'm from the South. We use hogwash. See, this is not. This whole version, It's funny. Daniel is no power, and he says, when I blow the horns and the trumpets, everybody in the kingdom will fall on their face and worship me. And anyone who doesn't do this, I will throw into the fiery furnace. And so he does it, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't bend their knee. They refuse. And he says, maybe you misunderstood. I'll give you another chance. If I blow the horn, you will fall down and worship me. And it says, King, that's what he said. I want you to know that we will not bow down. We will continue to serve Yahweh, which is the Hebrew word we get the word Jehovah from, but Yahweh. And our God is able to save us. But we want you to know, Nebuchadnezzar, that even if he doesn't save us, even if we die in the fiery furnace, we will not bend our knee to you. We will continue to worship our God. And so he throws them. I mean, they refuse to bow, and he throws them, and he has the furnace heated up 7 times hotter, and he has them thrown in. In fact, it's so hot that the Babylonian guard is actually, when he opens the cage to throw them in the furnace, the fire leaps out and kills the guards. And so they throw them in, hand and feet tied and bound. And close the door, and the king looks, and he says, he calls his advisor, and he says, didn't we throw 3 men in there? Yes, Your Majesty, just 3. Well, why is it I can see a 4th one in there? And he's walking around, and he's glowing like the Son of God. And the other 3 are roaming around with him, untouched, unscathed by the flame. And so he calls them to come out. And they walk out, and he says, and Nebuchadnezzar falls on his knees and worships the one true God. But guys, they knew that even if God didn't rescue them from the furnace, that they were still his servants. They still loved him. And so in the midst of the fire, they knew that they were not going to be there alone. God would not abandon them. There's one other thing I need you to know about this. The best reward in life is not having a life free of controversy or problems, but actually walking through it. Take heart, because I have overcome the world. Jesus has already overcome it. You don't have to do this. You're him. Everything else, you don't do this on your own. And I'm never going to tell you that in order to do this right, you have to try really, really hard. It's not what Scripture says. He's right there every step of the way. He never ran off and leave you. He didn't abandon Elijah when he was being chased across the country because somebody wanted to kill him. Jesus says, take heart, for I have overcome the world. Which is one of the reasons I wrote this message, and I called it, I was born for this. When you read this right here, you start finding out that maybe, just maybe, I was born for this circumstance. Not all the stuff that goes on, but because I love Jesus, I know that will you stop asking God to, oh, just God, get me out of this. I don't want to be in this, God. This is so hard. This is such a struggle. I don't want to deal with this, God. Please, walking through this. And maybe because he's done that it's going to change me. Maybe it's going to change the way you are to other people. Maybe it's going to change the way you treat your family or your spouse. I don't know. I don't know all the details. But I will tell you that when you walk through the fire and you walk through it with the Lord, when you come out on the other side, it will change you. It will change how you treat others. And if you stop asking God, oh, please, God, just get me out of this. Okay. I mean, think about it. Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I mean, they could have said, okay, God, please get us out of this. But they said, no, we trust God in the process, but we will go through this because I know our God is able to save us. Daniel in the lion's den. Spent the night in the lion's den. God shut the mouths of the lions. king comes down, gets Daniel out. Through it. And please, I understand. I know that we all go through hardships and struggles. Maybe we need to stop and look at the situation and see, maybe years ago, he met this guy in college, and he was trying to be a believer. He was really struggling, beat up about but he decided to make a stand in front of this guy about what he believed and why he believed it. The interesting thing, after about 3 months of this, the other young man, but have never met anybody who stood up for their faith like you just did. When I put you through all that, I was wanting to see if you really believed, because I didn't think anybody really believed that all Christianity was just fake. Because I'd used that young man, used the guy who was using that as a way to test to see whether your faith was real. But he walked through the fire. We want to get out of it. We don't want to be bothered. We don't want to have a hard time. We don't want to struggle. And so, but brothers and sisters, I tell you now, me through this, as a Christian, you're going to have to tell yourself and talk yourself into doing some things that without Jesus you would never do. That's part of it. Some of these fights and trials and struggles that you go through, if you were left on your own, you wouldn't go down. We don't like to be uncomfortable. We don't like to be stressed. We don't like to have hardship. But with Jesus, he may walk you down roads that you never planned to go on. I'm a Christian. That means everything good is... I'm not supposed to have anything bad happen to me. Maybe there comes a moment when you realize, wait a second, if there's an absence of adversity in my life, there must be an absence of progress as well.